Welcome to Rewinding Founders, where we talk to founders and entrepreneurs about the very early stages, openly and honestly, so everyone can see what it's actually like to start something new. So, Ethan, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Okay, so I'm gonna dive right in and ask you to, before you even tell us about what you're working on right now, tell us how you got started in entrepreneurship.
Yeah, I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur. It's something I've wanted to be since I was like a kid. So I always knew I was going to do this. My first company was when I was in college. So like I was a junior in college. It was during COVID, and I was sitting around with my roommates, and we're just kind of chatting, like throwing ideas around. And we're like, dude, like, what if there's this like event platform where you could like be like Uber for events um and like hosts around Los Angeles could throw their own parties and then people would go all on one platform. And so yeah, like we had the idea probably in April 2020, I think. And a friend and I spent the summer building it. And we launched that and no one used it. How it goes. Yeah, so the friend I met in high school, he moved to my hometown when he was a senior. So we've been friends for a while. We ski raced together. I'm from Wyoming. The audience probably doesn't know that. So yeah, we ski raced together in Wyoming for a while. And yeah, he ended up transferring to my school. So yeah, we'd just been friends for a while. The idea itself, I don't remember how it came about. It was one of those things where it was very casual. It's just kind of roommates talking. Um, and it like stayed casual for a while. It was kind of a summer project, something we were building, and then like it got serious as soon as we launched, and we were like, this isn't working. Like, how can we actually get an audience, get people to use it? And that's when it went from being something that was kind of a part-time thing to being like all consuming.
Cool. I can, my startup was exactly the way that I started also. Like me and my roommate were talking about how there has to be an app for this and we should help people do this. So that's how you got started. And then how did that company end?
Yeah, so we actually got it to work, which is kind of crazy. So we launched this app for parties in LA, and we it was the first week back on campus after COVID. So we had remote school for a year, then everyone was back on campus, and we walked around handing out flyers. We just did laps around the campus, giving like everyone we could meet a flyer with like a QR code of the app, and we spent like a whole day doing it, and we got 20 people to sign up. So
Okay.
like we got some users, but like we kind of thought we'd have hundreds, and like they tell their friends there'd be thousands, and at the end of the day, it was 20 people. So we kind of realized we were thinking about the whole business from the wrong perspective. We thought because this is a marketplace where you've got like the people who go to the parties and then the people who actually host the parties. We thought we'd get the people who go to the parties and then the host would naturally follow. And it turns out that's not how event hosting works. It's actually a really complicated industry. You've got all these different event hosts in LA who host small scale events, and they've got the people who rent out the space to throw the event in, and they've got the musicians, and they've got their promoters, and there's this whole distribution network that we had no idea that existed. So we had to learn about how that worked, and then we had to figure out like how can we fit in with that. Because our idea originally was, we're going to build this thing, we're going to get users, and then the event hosts are just going to use us, and there's going to be no other distribution. And like in hindsight, that doesn't make any sense. So we talked to a bunch of event hosts, and they told us that what they really wanted was customized websites that looked really good with their own branding, and ways of controlling their users' information. So you can think about like existing event platforms like Eventbrite and Ticketmaster, and you go on these platforms and you get like very standardized, boring websites that all kind of look the same. And these event platforms kind of control your users' information. So like your users sign up for an event, and then instead of being your customers, they become Eventbrite users. Then Eventbrite can like post other events from your competition, and you kind of lose control of that like distribution network. So like our whole thing was allowing our clients to control like their users' information and do things like send like text blasts to all the users and email blasts and just kind of interface with the users in a way that other platforms wouldn't allow, on top of having customized website. So we built those two things, and probably 3 months later is probably November. We got the first event on our app, and we got maybe 1,000 users, and it kind of so we did that for 4 months. We were kind of sort of profitable. We didn't make a lot of money, but we got up to like 15,000 users, which was pretty good. We were pretty happy with it, and
Yeah.
um, and then it turned out there's this other platform in New York that was doing the same thing, that kind of heard about us and went to all our clients and were like, we're going to undercut them. We're going to give you a better deal if you leave them for us. And then we lost all our clients.
What?
Yeah.
How did they even find out about you?
They had other clients in the Los Angeles area. It's really kind of a small scene of people who like throw parties in Los Angeles. So like their clients told them like, hey, there's these other guys who are using this other app that's out there. Then they reached out to our clients and were like, we've got a
Huh.
better deal for you.
For the hosts.
For the host, yeah.
Wow. That's so interesting. And that's when you decided that you're moving on from the idea.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of slowed down. We were friends with our hosts, so they felt bad about it. And they kind of like gave us like small pieces of work to make it like kind of feel less like they're abandoning us. But the writing was on the wall, and it was like, we can either spend, another couple years like building this to the point where it's really good and competing head on with this other company, or we can give this up and maybe work on a different idea, which we'd be more passionate about. So we did the second one.
Okay, interesting. And then how did you get to your next idea? Is that what you're working on now?
Sort of. So yeah, like we phased out the end of my junior year before my senior year. I took the summer off and just lived with friends, and I worked as I did lawn maintenance for a summer, so it's like the least skilled job you can imagine. Um,
Okay,
yeah, and then I did study abroad
interesting.
in Singapore for the fall. And while I was on study abroad, it was when ChatGPT came out, so we saw what AI could do, and I was doing all this traveling around Asia from Singapore, and we kind of had this thought that like it's really hard to find cool things to do. So like for instance, I planned this trip to Japan, to Tokyo, and on the trip, we did like all the basic touristy stuff. It was hard to kind of like pierce below the surface and like actually find really, really cool things. Like really like local restaurants or local bars or the best nightclubs or whatever. And so we kind of thought like, what if we could aggregate the whole travel research process, where instead of having you spend hours reading Reddit posts and watching YouTube videos and reading online blogs, what if an AI did that whole process for you, read all of those sources, and made a database of the best stuff in a given place? And that's what we're working on now.
Hmm. So is it? How does it work?
Okay, so we're essentially a search engine. We use an AI pipeline, so we've got like 5 different LLMs that crawl the internet, finding good sources, and then extract information from those sources, and then map them on a map. And then we've got a separate LLM that takes the user search and matches it with results in the database. So I know that's very abstract, but I can so an example would be, if you're planning a backcountry skiing trip to like Grand Teton National Park, the AI has already previously identified every single blog about backcountry skiing in Grand Teton National Park, identified every single result that the blog talks about, pulled those results out, created a database result, matched that with mapping information, and then when you make a search like what are the best backcountry skiing runs in Grand Teton National Park, it filters the database, finds backcountry skiing runs in Grand Teton National Park, and then prioritizes stuff that it like qualitatively thinks are good based on sentiment analysis and other features like that.
Hmm. Interesting. And while you were working on both the last startup and this one, were you also working like at a job, or were you really full in only on the startup?
I was in school for also events. For the
Mm,
most recent one, I've been. People are mostly pretty supportive. I'm really
cool.
lucky. Like my friends are like super supportive, and my family's been awesome about this whole thing, which is super nice and like I'm really grateful for. The thing that's kind of interesting is, I live in Wyoming, which isn't exactly the center of the startup universe, and I live in kind of a small ski town, and there's this like really weird dynamic where it's like everyone's like skiing all the time, and it's kind of like it's hard to explain. Like, yeah, like I'm sorry, I'm not gonna ski both days this weekend. I'm gonna work on the app. It's like it's a very different vibe from some place like SF where everyone's like always working on something, and the culture just feels different around that.
How do you feel about it?
It's I feel good about it. I mean, like I'm moving to San Francisco. I think it's probably more my place than Jackson is, and yeah, like I'm really excited for the move and see how it goes.
Amazing. When are you moving?
June 6th.
Soon. Cool.
Soon.
Great. Are you working on the current startup with the co-founders?
I am, yeah. He's another friend from high school. He different friend from the last startup. He went to Cornell for computer science, so he's really good with that stuff. And yeah, we grew up together in my hometown. We both ran cross country, so we kind of know each other from that. And yeah, we've been best friends for a while. So we kind of came back together after college. We're like, let's do a startup and see how it goes.
Amazing. Who came up with the initial thoughts?
It was kind of both of us. I think I probably was the one who said like, "Yo, I've got this idea. Like, what if we did this?" It was something he was also thinking about.
Mm.
He's also doing some trips to different areas, and he's super into backcountry skiing. So he kind of realized that like for outdoor recreation, there could be a really strong use case. So it was kind of a collaborative thing where like maybe I came up with like the initial like kernel of something, but then he kind of like added a lot onto it and kind of fleshed the whole thing out, if that makes sense.
Amazing. It seems like you really were both very aligned in wanting to do it. So no one really had to convince anyone. It was more like, let's do it.
Yeah, pretty much. It's very natural. It was like, we we had a call about it probably midway through my last semester in college, and we were like, dude, like, what are you doing after college? Let's do a startup. That's all it took.
That's amazing. When did you first call yourself a founder?
Probably this year. To be honest, I've never loved the term, just because like I don't feel like a founder until I've actually done something that works. So yeah, I try not to call myself a founder just because I feel like it's kind of like pretentious for me to be like I'm the founder until I actually have a company that actually takes off.
Yeah, I get that. I feel like the word founder has a lot of weight to it in different people's eyes. Like a lot of people, myself included, struggle to call themselves founders in the beginning because it's like, well, if I say I'm a founder, then I'm supposed to be in a certain level. Like I'm supposed to have done something, which is interesting.
Exactly. It's like I'm a founder, like Jack Dorsey or Elon Musk or like whoever else. Maybe I'd say I think of myself as a founder. I just don't say it to the world. If that makes sense.
Cool. That's cool. And okay, so a new question. What did you find? Why did you, my words are mumbling. What did you find out about entrepreneurship that surprised you?
It's much harder than you think, and it's much different than you think. Yeah, I mean, it's as when you start your first company, you go into this kind of imagining yourself to be like the next Uber or the next whatever, and you don't realize there's tens of thousands of people who are trying to start companies who are failing all the time, whose stories never get told, and you also don't realize that there's a ton of people who've tried to go into this business before and maybe have succeeded, who understand how it works much better than you do. And all these different industries have their own dynamics and their own markets and their own ways of doing things that are frankly easier to go along with than to disrupt. And it's kind of naive to go into something and be like, I'm going to make this great product, and everyone who's in this industry is going to completely change how they go about doing everything. It doesn't work like that. Like you've got to figure out how to like slot into some like existing niche of how people already do stuff.
Cool. In what way did you learn that?
Definitely Alta events. I mean, I think it was starting the event company and then realizing that like we had this very naive view of how events work. And when you actually talk to people who are in the industry, there is an industry. There's different roles. There's distributors and promoters and DJs and musicians and like bouncers and like event organizers and all these different kind of roles within the industry. And it's not nearly as simple as you think from the outset.
Interesting. What's the craziest or weirdest thing you've done in order to get like people to join the startup?
That's hard.
Whatever you
Yeah,
can
I
think
mean,
of.
we did so much stupid stuff with with the event company, handing out
Okay.
flyers, making posters. I don't remember the weirdest thing. I mean, one kind of weird thing which didn't really work, but we tried was creating like invitations, which were really formal looking. Dear, like so and so, like you're invited to join Alta events. This is a new platform, so it looked very like official and like Times New Roman font on like fancy paper, and we'd like go to every apartment around the university and slide it under doors. Yeah, I mean it's worth a try.
Yeah. Okay. What was one early victory you had that felt like something happened and you were like, wow, this is amazing.
Yeah, it was definitely the first party on our platform. So
Oh
we
wow.
yeah, I mean it's like such a good feeling when you launch something and it actually works. We talked with this event host and they're like, we think this is finally at the point where we want to use you guys. So we built them a custom website. We did the whole ticketing flow. And then I remember I was skiing that day and I was just on the chairlift and we had this, we had Stripe for credit card payments, but we also had this like different payment system where you could pay us via Venmo. And then we like kind of hacked into the Venmo API to send us receipts when someone pays us. So like someone would pay us and then we'd send them the ticket kind of programmatically after they paid us. So I was like on the chairlift skiing and I started to get these Venmo notifications like so and so paid you like $5 or so and so paid you like however much. And it was like, this is so cool. I'm just like sitting here like having people use the app like well I'm not even dealing with anything.
Wow. That must be like mind-blowing exciting the first time.
It was super exciting. Yeah.
Amazing. That's so cool. And how did you like once you had that, what was it like when you kept going? Did it at all affect your motivation? How did you feel about it?
Um, yeah, I mean, I was definitely more motivated for sure. When you've actually got a product that people are using, there's more kind of pressure on you. Like, there's definitely more responsibility, especially when you're working with these event hosts. It's not being something where it can be like, you know, the platform went down for an hour or whatever, 20 people are on the platform, being like, the platform went down. This is horrible. We're in the middle of an event right now. This is potentially catastrophic. Everything's got to work all the time perfectly. And that's like a very different feeling. In terms of motivation, I don't think like it was definitely motivating to see people using it. I don't think it was super motivating. I would have kept working on it either way. Yeah, I mean, it was definitely cool to see.
That's cool. Do you feel like the relationship you had with your co-founder, either in Alta or now, the relationship you had with your co-founder, did it change throughout the journey?
Yeah, absolutely. That's another big thing. Like as in my personal experience, you know, like the last two times I've started companies with friends, and you start these companies, and initially it's like this amazing feeling. You guys are both building something, it's super creative. There's no pressure because you're early on. And then it gets to the point where there's a lot of pressure and stuff isn't working. And that's a very different feeling. Most times, like I've remained close to my co founders and it's not been a big issue. But there's definitely been rocky periods. And there's been a couple times where it's like, okay, things are getting like really strained between us. Like relationship wise, it's not going really well. Um, I need to rethink like how I'm like treating my co-founder and how we can like pull this back on track and like after this company ends, whether it succeeds or fails, we're still gonna be friends afterwards. And like how I can make sure that happens. With my most recent co-founder, it's just making sure once or twice a month we do something together that's fun. Like we go skiing or we get we go out to eat someplace or just do something like hang out in a way where it's not just all about the app. And like we don't like a professional relationships a lot different from like an interpersonal one. And with my co-founder, we've always had like really friendly, funny relationship where we kind of like goof around a lot. That's very different from working on an app together. And in terms of working on the app, it's like being able to have that professional relationship, but also being able to like switch out of modes and like just a couple times a month, like go back to like the way things used to be.
That's amazing. How do you, when you have different opinions or you think different things that you should do about the app, how do you come together and make the decisions?
Yeah, I mean, Um, like just the way I think about stuff, I'm pretty introverted, so I don't think best when I'm talking to someone. I think best when I'm like on my own, kind of processing stuff, if that makes sense. So so yeah, like it's kind of realizing that like when my co-founder has a suggestion, maybe rather than talk about it right then, I should kind of table that and then think about it on my own, and like a day later come back and have like some suggestion. And just also obviously being open to stuff and just kind of just keeping an open mind to your co-founder's ideas, but also knowing when to push, like knowing when like you've got a very clear vision of how things should go, and you know you're right about that, and like being able to like just kind of follow your instincts and like not give up on something you know to be true, just when you guys don't agree on something.
And do you feel like there's a there's a certain balance? Do you each make decisions in different fields? Do you like how do you do that?
Yeah, so recently we've been doing something that really works well. We've actually kind of split the product into two different things. So do you know Strava? Yeah, so like for Strava, it's got like different segments, and for each segment, you've got a leaderboard of people who've done it. So one thing we've been thinking about for a while is, can you take those segments and can you create like a conditions report for a route based on the segment? So if 10 people ski a ski line and maybe like five of them describe how the skiing was, can you take those five descriptions and make a description of what the conditions are at the given time? So I've and my co-founder like came up with that idea, and for the last month or two, he's just been running with it, and it's been awesome because like it's his own project. He's like got complete ownership over it. He's a much more avid Strava user than I am, so he's got a lot more ideas and he's got a lot more inspiration about what he's building.
Mhm.
And and yeah, like it's super, and like he can just kind of take that in his own direction, and I don't have a ton of input, which is great because we kind of like give ourselves like different domains for which we're in charge. Like I'm in charge of like the AI development for what we're doing. He's in charge of the Strava scraper, and and I think that's a really good way of doing things.
Amazing. Okay. Next question. How long did it take for you from, okay, this is a nice idea, let's think about it, to, okay, we're fully in, we're not taking any other jobs, we're trying to go to accelerators. Like, what was that journey like?
It almost happened in the opposite direction. We were like, we're all in. What should we do? We have this
Huh,
idea.
okay.
Let's go for it. So it really, I don't think there was a moment where we're like, we're kind of half doing this. This is really working out. We should go all in. It's more like we've always wanted to be startup founders. We're out of college. This is our chance. Let's go for it. What should we do?
Amazing. And why do you think you've always wanted to be a startup founder? Like, what do you think about you led you to there?
I don't know, to be honest. And maybe it's just like being like in the zeitgeist. You look out at the world, and if you're a technical person, which I am, like I'm an engineer, you like look out at the best people in the field, the best engineers, and the really notable ones are startup founders who are able to work on their own ideas and build amazing things. And that's why I do engineering. I think the idea of coming up with your own solution to a problem and then being able to implement it yourself and do the whole thing is incredibly inspiring. And like, that's what I love about engineering.
Amazing. Do you feel like when you, like the vision you saw of how it's gonna be and your actual reality, like does it does it clash in a way? Is it the same?
It definitely clashes. I mean, that's kind of how startups go, though. Like you start with a concept, and then it goes out into the real world. It fails, and then you innovate from there. You iterate, you try different things, and it ends up looking completely different from how you expected it to look in the outset. But that's cool because like oftentimes it looks better than you would have expected.
Amazing. Amazing. I feel like every startup like has so many pivots and little moments of understanding this is not the direction we're going. We actually need to do something different. And it sounds like you really learned from different points along the journey where to put your energy in a way.
Absolutely, yeah.
Amazing.
It's a huge lesson from doing startups that your ideas are almost always wrong, and it's just about like adapting as you try different things.
How do you think you've
I've become much more serious as I've kind of realized how hard this is. Um, And I've kind of realized how much it's skill based. Like when you start, it all seems super easy. Like it's like you're going to build an app with AI. How hard can it possibly be? And then you realize that there's like people who spend their whole lives getting good at this, and there's a massive and like your skills as someone who's been doing this for 3 months are much worse than someone who's been doing this for the last 10 years. And it's kind of recognizing that like you don't have the skills to do it, and that gaining those skills is incredibly useful. And that's been the lesson of last year. Like I thought we'd build this on top of GPT. We started building it on top of GPT. It just didn't work as we expected. And then we kind of learned like this isn't going to work. Like we need to learn how LLMs work. We need to understand like the basic like algorithms. We need to like understand the stuff from the ground up so we can actually work with it. And yeah, like just kind of realizing that makes you serious and makes you realize how hard stuff is, and that it's really kind of full-time commitment. It's and you've got to do like not just get the business right, but also get the skill side right.
Amazing. Do you feel like the startup affected relationships in your life? Like the way you are with different people?
Yeah, I mean it's in some ways, yeah, like it's hard because it's such like a full-time thing, and it's easy to get sucked into working like all out on something. Like during Founders U, we were both a couple teams out of what 200 teams, 300 teams, and we knew from the outset that 10 to 20% of the teams would actually go on to get funding. And knowing that, like at the beginning of Founders U, I was like, I've just got to go all in and give this my best shot, and work all out for 3 months to see if I can make this work. And it's hard because I was like MIA from my friend group for 3 months as I was working on this. And yeah, like in the last couple months after Founders U ended, I've been able to kind of relax a bit and focus on like kind of rebuilding those friendships, and like hitting people up to like hang out, and not just kind of disappearing into work full time. But yeah, it's definitely about striking that balance, and like knowing when to go all in and when not to go all in. Interpersonally, I think one interesting thing from like working on the startup is kind of realizing how much you can learn from other people. Because in realizing how ignorant you are about most things in the world, and that there's so much more out there that you don't really realize, and it really it makes everything a learning experience. Like everyone's got their own like expertise or their own insights into the world, and there's interesting conversation to be had if you can actually listen to people.
Amazing. I was talking to a founder a few days ago, and he told me, he said that one thing that he realized is that he was super naive when he started out.
Oh,
Because
totally.
yeah, and we talked about how if you're not naive, then it's a little hard to start. Like everyone starts out really like thinking they understand what they need to understand, and then just keep, like the best founders keep learning along the way. Amazing. How do you what's the word? Like how important to you is building like a network, meeting people, getting to meetups or anything with the more entrepreneurial world? Like, is that even something that you think about?
Yeah, it totally is. I don't think about the entrepreneurial world that much. Like honestly, I've been thinking more about like the AI world. Um, it's so I went to USC, which you're Israeli, so I'm not sure how much you know about the school, but
Not much.
it's got kind of it's got this vibe of being like a party school for rich kids.
Okay.
So like
Nice.
people call it like the University of Spoiled Children.
Hmm.
And like it's not the place where like great founders graduate from. It's not like Stanford where you're
Hmm.
in a class and you know that like a quarter of the class is going to go on to start companies, and maybe like the next Mark Zuckerberg and the next like Musk or whoever is like in the room with you. That's not the vibe you get from USC. Like it's either like rich kids who are like partying all the time and are in frats and like doing the business school thing, or like kids who are just very like down to earth but very kind of pre-professional, who are just there to get an engineering degree and go on to get jobs. And like those are both fun. Like those are life choices. Like I think I really missed out on like building that network of potential co-founders and potential people, who are going to also start companies. And that's something I really want to build in the future. So yeah, that's something I really care about, and that's why I moved to San Francisco. We still want to work on this part time because we love what we're working on. We think it's super cool. But yeah, we're both getting jobs. We're kind of doing our own thing and just seeing where life takes us.
Cool. So you're doing it. It becomes less of the only thing you're doing, and it's something that you're going to do while also doing other things.
Exactly. Yeah.
Cool. And okay, I had a question that I wanted to ask you. What's one piece of advice that you hear founders getting, or something that an advice that you got that you think is not so accurate about startups?
I think there's a lot of contradictory advice out there, and that's one thing to keep in mind. That a lot of the advice you hear is just straight up contradictory to what someone else thinks. The thing I've been most struggling with in terms of advice is how how easy should an idea be that you're working on. You hear a lot of people talk about you should work on something that you can build really quickly, and you should just build an MVP as fast as possible within a couple months, get that out, and then iterate from there. The other approach is going for like a more deep tech approach and building something that's working on something that's really hard, that really matters to the world, but is less likely to succeed and requires a lot more work. And I've just been kind of struggling with like where along that like range should like I go. Should I work on something that's easy but maybe less meaningful, or something that's really hard but less likely to succeed, but potentially more meaningful? And I don't think there's one set of advice out there. I just think it's something to keep in mind.
Cool. What do you think are some important traits that anyone who wants to start a company should have? Qualities that without you wouldn't have even been able to get to this point.
I think creativity is a huge one that I think is kind of underappreciated. It seems like a lot of people start a lot of the same ideas in Silicon Valley. You see a lot of people working on the exact same things. And I think there is an element of just being creative and thinking way outside the box, and also just having kind of a unique life experience in a way that leads you to work on things that maybe aren't obvious to people who are just normally in the tech field.
Cool. Interesting. Like the fact that you have a different view of something can give you a lot of like an edge in a way, something that people don't think about.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Cool. What advice would you give yourself of before you ever started to start a company?
Honestly, network more and be serious earlier on. When I was in college, frankly, when I was in high school, it's a very different vibe in Wyoming. It's not like in a lot of the West Coast like high schools. There's this vibe of like you're going to work all the time. You're going to get amazing SAT scores. And you're going to go on to like the best college possible. In Wyoming, the vibe was like, we're going to ski race 5 days a week and go to school 4 days a week, and like not. It's like very much less academic, and much more kind of like outdoor oriented, which isn't. It's not bad. Then like I graduated high school, kind of thinking that that was a work ethic that would work, where we're working 4 days a week and like not working that hard would actually work out. And for my first couple of years in high school, sorry, my first couple of years in college, I really wasn't that focused. And then starting a company kind of makes you realize like how much the connections you have and the skills you have matter. And I would have been much better off if I'd built those earlier on. And like right now, I feel like I'm kind of trying to catch up. Um, it's harder than building those skills and network when you're a freshman in college, and you can choose whatever classes you want to take, and you can make great relationships with professors, and it's easier earlier on in college versus like when you're out of school.
And sorry, do you think that when you start a company, you actually understood what you're getting yourself into?
No, absolutely not. Um, but like that's how it goes. Like I don't remember what I thought when I first started my first company, but I probably did realize it was going to be different than I expected, and that it was going to be this experience where you kind of learn as you go, and that's totally what it is, and it is totally possible to learn a lot of the skills you need as you go. It's just kind of realizing that's going to be the case and being open to learning those things.
Okay, I have two more questions.
Sure, go for it.
Okay, one, what is one skill that you wish you had?
here's my thing is like I feel like most of these skills are teachable. So yeah, I'm not sure there's any skills which aren't really teachable. It seems like you learn most things if you give it enough time. So I guess that's my big thing. Like I feel like I'm compared to a lot of people, I'm starting this game later um,
Hmm.
than I should have, and I'd be at a massive advantage if I got serious when I was a freshman in college versus a junior in college.
I think a lot of people would say that what you said is insane.
And
Yeah,
teach yourself
because,
this.
and by the way, I feel exactly the same. Like I started thinking about startups when I was 22, I think, and and I and I felt so late in the game, and everyone who was a bit older than me was like, "You're not late at all." It's interesting because you see the people who started when they were 12 and you feel that way, and then maybe not. What advice would you give someone who's thinking of starting a company but is maybe scared, maybe not sure how to go at it?
Um, it's got to be something you really want. It would be my biggest piece of advice.
Hmm.
If it's something where you're just doing because it seems cool, and it's not something like absolutely you want to do, like you've just got to keep in mind that this company's going to fail, probably your next company's going to fail, probably company after that's going to fail, and then maybe 10 years down the line you'll have this success. It's kind of on the one hand, like being naive is good because you start the process, and then you're 3 years in, and you kind of realize like I've got 7 years ahead of me of failure before I actually succeed. But like also just kind of knowing that and like being able to like know to your core that this is something you want and you're going to be resilient to actually do those 10 years of work is probably huge.
Okay, so Ethan, thank you so much for sharing everything. I think it's really great for people who are starting out and being founders for the first time to really hear about the fact that it's okay if you have to do it a few times, and it's okay if it's hard in the beginning, and that you keep learning along the way. And thank you so much for sharing everything.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.